KIUC has decided not to renew their revocable permit for the Blue Hole hydropower project for the time being. Ultimately, they have requested a disposition just for access and to maintain the infrastructure, but not to take any water as a result or divert any water as a result. And we'll work on that with them as a separate disposition. So we're not asking for any approval of a disposition today, only the acknowledging that the revocable permit will be terminated. And myself and Blue will be here for any questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any testimony, public testimony?
Yeah, we do. Just 1 second. I want to get Russell in here. Okay, so let's see.
Right?
Yeah. All right. You want to go ahead and testify on D3?
Sure.
Good afternoon, Chair Case and members of the board. We've been coming before you now for more than 5 years on this particular revocable permit, and I understand Mr. Hirakawa's explanation on RP 7340, which is why I'm here. My name is Bridget Hammerquist. I'm also born in Hilo, Keikaha girl, a lot of Hilo types around, and I have headed up an organization on Kauai that has a water arm, Kia'iwai Waialeale, and Friends of Maha Ulepu. And most of what we do is work toward environmental integrity and preservation. And our water is a big part of that. What I did before you is I filed a comment, and basically in the comment, we pointed out that we don't feel the staff, and we're asking the board to not permit the staff to work on some kind of accommodation with KIUC. And the primary reason is that for many, many years now, KIUC has not complied with the conditions of RP S7340. And what I made for you today, and maybe Darlene helped me to give it out because I'm so poorly sighted now. Yeah, thank you. Is I tried to get some pictures that document the disrepair of this system. And I'm here to tell you that there's hundreds and hundreds of people on Kauai that are very unhappy with the maintenance and repair that have not been done on this water transmission system. And if you look at RP 7340, that's exactly what this is. Yes, it emanates from Blue Hole, but the permit itself is very clear that it's an entire water transmission system. And there's a 5-mile ditch running from where it initially emanates in Waialeale Stream to the very first hydropower plant, the upper hydropower plant. For more than 3 years, KIUC has not used the waters that have continued to be diverted. And the diversions have, Waialeale has pretty much finally been closed off. Waikoko is still getting diverted. But downstream, there's enough damage to the ditch system that they can't collect the water in their penstock sufficiently to work the 100-year-old hydros, which have never produced more than 1.8% of the island's power need. And some years there have been no power production at all, and we've documented that in past testimonies. But as the years have gone, I know we have a real good report, which I'd like to incorporate by reference from the state hydrologist, Aaron Strock, who walked the ditch system and studied it in 2018. And he reported to the Commission on Water Resource Management then in 2018 that as much as 20+% of the stream flow is lost because of seepage and outright leaks of water. They've only gotten worse over time because nobody's repairing the ditch system. We spent probably to date over $50,000 trying to protect the streams and the integrity of the environment around the streams. When this last report we commissioned North Shore Hydrology to do, that cost us a little over $4,000. So the community is absolutely committed to trying to preserve these streams. And I think North Shore Hydrology and the hydrologist there, Matt Rosner, who I think has a pretty decent relationship with the state hydrologist, Aaron Strock, he actually documented in some places leaks that are so bad that a 10-foot gully has been carved out of the mountainside and is creating a new canyon from the water flow, and the vegetation on the sides of that gully suggests that it's ongoing, it's not old, and it's abundant. In his report in 2018, when Aaron Strock reported that there was at least 20% of seepage and loss from the system, that represented over 4 million gallons daily. That's a lot of water wasting. And we know from recent events that water is not an unlimited resource in the state, and we should protect it. KIUC has done an abominable job protecting it. They just really haven't tried. It's like a slash and burn. They went in and took the water for as long as they can, and when it got broken down enough, they said, you know what, we don't want it anymore. We're not going to renew our RP. Well, I don't think they should have any kind of permit, and I'm asking the board to please look carefully at RP 7340, because there's a number of provisions, particularly 414, that indicate their obligation to ensure this water transmission system and make sure they could repair it. And they're supposed to provide the state with a policy of insurance that shows that the state is a named insured and takes into account vandalism, damage, rainstorms. They're supposed to insure for that. If they have a policy of insurance, I can only say the community has seen no evidence of it ever being used to make the necessary repairs. They've only gotten worse. And then in this case, there's also condition 16, which specifically says, if the RP terminates, expires by its own terms, or is revoked by the state does not lose their authority to make the repairs and fix the water transmission system to have it in a workable order. But the state should have it done, and they have the absolute contractual right to bill KIUC for all costs of repair. And to give KIUC a permit after what they've done is, in our mind, just absolute folly. They came before you last year and they absolutely denied our testimony that Waikoko stream bed was still dry. All of our efforts for the last 6 years have been to keep stream flow in place, Mauka to Makai, to preserve the biota and the environment. And KIUC insisted to this board last year after I testified, and I remember it well because I was ill at the time. They insisted that Waikoko stream bed was restored. There was no dry stream bed. Well, that was absolutely false, and I maintain they knew it was false, and they lied to you. Now, that's not the type of permittee that I think is deserving of any further permit whatsoever. Rather, the state should, on behalf of the stakeholders, all of us, and under the duties of the preservation of a water resource, one of our public trust protected resources, the state should do what's needed to get this repaired properly and maintained properly. And Mr. Rosner talks about how much of the ditch has growing trees in it. You know, there hasn't been any maintenance. When I'm a sugar plantation girl, and we used to have ditch maintenance crews, and they would keep trees and vegetation, and they had periodic, you know, they take different sections at a time, but they kept their ditches in order. And there's no evidence that this ditch system has had any degree of organized maintenance or repair. So now it's really bad. And for 3.5 years, they haven't been able to use a drop of the water. So the $180,000 of co-op members' money that they've paid to the state has been for nothing. We might as well have taken the $180,001 bills, made a big pile and lit it. Because they say themselves, they have not used the water since 2019. So it's just a travesty. And I know Ian in the past said he recommended renewal of their permit because they were still willing to make the payments. But the ratepayers are out there and they haven't had any beneficial use and they haven't benefited by those payments. And KIUC obviously is still wanting some stake in that system, but they're not entitled to it. They wrote the board October 22nd and said, this is to give you notice, we're terminating our contract with the state. I don't know if they thought they could walk away and not be responsible for the damage, but I know this isn't up for any particular action today, but I felt it was very important to testify before you and ask you to please review RP 7340 and give Mr. Hirakawa and the land board your wisdom and direction, have it come as an agenda item for action later, whatever is appropriate. But this permittee does not deserve any permit on this premise ever again. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes,
Are you saying that they are diverting water?
yes, they still are at Waikoko. It's a member of my staff and the hydrologists were up there on July 3rd. A member of our organization, Noelani Jocelyn, was up there and photographed November 27th.
But
And-
I see the photographs that show dry stream, but I don't necessarily see photographs of open ditches. Because I know this is from my work on the Water Commission side, this is a losing stretch of stream below in Waikoko.
Well,
Is the diversion open?
it is open in part. They didn't close it effectively and they didn't do what they did at Waialeale. They didn't board up the throwout. So if they close it effectively with rocks and they board up the throwout, then what happens is the water pool overtops the dam and you do get Maukata Makai flow restored. And I think when Mr. Ewan was on the board, that was clearly what he intended when he made his motion in 2018. And he specified what amount of water he wanted to maintain in the stream. I know the board then and before then was always concerned about dry stream bed, as our biologists have been, because the natural migration of the biota that use the streams have to stop once there's a dry stream bed. Plus, we're getting a lot of invasive species that come into the stream beds when it's not properly watered. The biology changes, the ecology changes. So yes, it is still being diverted in part, and the throwout's not closed. And then there is enough water that gets into the ditch itself that it carries water down to these other areas that are damaged, and they're leaking out onto the mountainside. That's what
How
we tried
much
to
water do you
photograph.
think is coming through the diversion?
Well, through the diversion, Mr. Rosner said there's still 97% coming through the diversion. The throwout is catching a lot of it, but I couldn't tell you, I'm not a hydrologist. I couldn't tell you the percentage between the throwout and the ditch itself, Chair. I'm sorry, I don't have that expertise. And, but I think he found it still significant and walked quite a ways down. I also should add, I studied the TMK. That I could still do because I can blow stuff up. And the TMK that's in this permit, it's 43911 on Kauai. It's 2,889 hectares, or acres, excuse me, not hectares, acres. So it's a big area that they signed up. And obviously the transmission system, the ditch, the diversions, the pools and the dams are what they're supposed to be taking care of. And a lot of it is, we thought some of the downstream sources were on Grove farmland, but when we actually looked at the 2,889 acres, a lot of the upper stream sources and first diversions, because there's a second diversion downstream again that diverts into North Ditch. And that's why I included Aaron Strzok's schematic in our comment, because the upper diversions, many of them are on state conservation land, that 2,889 acres. But they've not repaired anything in the past. And it's folly to think they're going to do it in the future, especially since they've terminated and made the state aware that they don't intend to pay a fee any longer.
Okay, so you understand that the matter before us today. I mean, I appreciate your comments, but there is no RP requested, so there's no action that we're taking today.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I do have this question, though. In the event that a RP or a license is issued to the utility, at that point of time, I guess there can be further restrictions and safeguards or studies by the Water Commission.
Well, I think the land board, as I understand it from the RP, the land board is responsible for the maintenance of the overall transmission system, not the Commission on Water Resource
That is
Management.
precisely my next question. If the utility does not have an RP, other than prior obligations that are continuing, who would fix the system?
Well, according to condition 16, sir, it says this, that if the permittee doesn't maintain it, and condition B 13 and 14 also say this, the permittee's obligation doesn't end, and that makes sense contractually, right? If someone goes in and just uses the heck out of a system, doesn't make any repairs, lets it get so broken they can't use it anymore, right? Then do they just get to walk away and say, bye, it's back to you, we're out? No, the conditions specifically say, A16, B 13 and 14, that the contractual requirements survive termination, revocation, or expiration. And it only makes sense, right? Because
Are you
why
saying
should
they should repair the whole system, or are
oh,
you
the
just
state,
con-
right now, I think the state has to, because
are-
under
are-
the provisions of the permit,
But the system's not being used right now, or not going to be used for the next year or whatever.
well, it's not being used, but it's still possible to effectively close the diversions, effectively close the throwouts, so you have stream flow, right? Nothing's coming out of the streams then.
But who would
Well-
do that?
Well, according to 16, if the permittee doesn't do it, the state's supposed to do it. And the state is supposed to pass the bill on to the permittee. I mean, it's 16 is really clear. It says in the face of revocation, expiration, or termination, the state, in recovery of its water transmission system, will make the necessary repairs and will pass them on to the permittee. And I know that there's not an action on your agenda today, but how do we get this information to you? And I thought best to come and share all this
Okay.
while it's on, while it's on the agenda. We are thrilled that KIUC gave up their renewal of this RP and told you they didn't want to renew it. And they told you that maybe they'll do it in the future. They've been saying that kind of for a long time.
Okay.
And they interjected years ago
Okay, so
that they would repair once they had a lease. And
So-
that's not what this permit says. It
So
doesn't say
you're-
you get to wait.
Your supposition, and I guess the board can look into it, is whether there are any residual contractual obligations after the non-renewal of this permit.
I can't imagine that there isn't. It's all spelled out in the RP.
I just don't understand why if they're saying they're not going to use it and you're saying good, they're not going to use it, why you would still want to insist that they do some repairs when the whole
No,
point
I'm
of
not
them
insisting they
applying-
do them.
Not applying for the renewal is that they don't want to make the repairs until they know that they have a water license.
Well, that's,
Why do you care about, I mean, I understand that you care that if they're not using the waters, the diversions are effective. But the
because
rest of
we're,
the ditch system is
we're losing over 4 million gallons a day, every day.
where? At the diversion.
No, downstream of the diversion, at the place where the ditch broke. I mean, there's a picture
But if
that,
there's, I'm sorry, I guess I'm just not understanding. If
Okay,
there's no
well,
water
we-
coming down the ditch because.
no,
they're
there
gonna-
is, there
Because
is.
they're gonna close the diversion.
But there still is, Chair, because there is sheet flow into the transmission system. which Mr. Strzok can walk you through better than I can, for sure. But there is water definitely flowing in the ditch system. There's sheet flow that comes off the side of the mountain. There's stream flow that still would be restored. That'd be a benefit. So all the diversions all the way along should be effectively closed that's on state land. And there's more diversions on state land than just Waikoko and Wiley Alley. But the water transmission system, which is what they talk about in the first paragraph of RP 7340, emanates from Wiley Alley and Waikoko. And if those big streams are effectively closed off, that will give you an opportunity to repair the ditch down the way so that when we have heavy rains, when we have storms, we won't have 20% loss or more now, because there's this big hole in part of the ditch where a stream is still entering the ditch. And Mr. Rosner describes that. And that hole is only going to get deeper and deeper. It's 10 foot deep now. It's quite the size. It's a gully. And,
Are there any other questions? Okay.
and I thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. For helping us out.
Ian, did you
Right.
comment?
Yeah, can I just make one comment? And I'm not sure, we'd have to look at the RP closer to see what, if any, post-closing or post-termination obligations KIUC would have. But one thing I would want to note is, even if there were some obligation to conduct repairs, I think it's still important to note that I don't know if we could simply say, well, you have to maintain it in the future without a permit. I think, it likely
No.
land division would have to maintain it, even if it's repaired, because it's how we do it, the East Kauai system, right? I mean, the co-op had it, they terminated their permit, and now land division incurs something like $150,000 a year just to keep the system functional and safe, right? We're not even doing any ongoing repair. So I think our concern is we would potentially incur costs if, even if they did do initial repair just to maintain it. I think we would incur additional costs to our operating funds.
Okay,
Well,
let's go ahead and hear from KIUC on this then.
Can I just finish with one to his comment, though, Chair? Because the one thing I think, Ian, that maybe my comment wasn't clear on is they don't at this point have the right to do repairs. But the
Actually,
state,
right now they do, because they have. a
well, as of
current
tomorrow,
January 1.
no, it's actually December 10. It says on the permit, it's 1 year from the date it's granted, which they got it last December 10.
Right.
So the expiration is tomorrow. And it does limit them and their ability to do anything. But the bigger point is they've never been doing anything. So, that definition of insanity is to have the thing done the same time, right?
I would like to.
Yeah, I'm
give them a
sorry.
chance to-
Thank you. Yeah, but the state does have the option to repair and bill them. You're not going to eat the cost, Ian. You make them pay for it. That's what the law says, and that's what this contract says.
Okay, next up is Don Huff.